it was one of those things where the communication wasn't there, and
Mm,
then I got blamed for having my prop person make it the wrong way, even though the
hmm.
script said it this way.
Yeah.
I took it so personally. I've never been angry on set except this one time, and I put my hand through a panel that I had made
Yeah.
just out of sheer, like, I had no
Yeah.
more emotional energy and it just needed to go somewhere.
Mm.
And then I just burst into tears. That was probably the lowest I've ever been on set.
Welcome to The Practical Filmmaker, an educational podcast brought to you by the Filmmaker Institute and Sunscreen Film Festival, where industry professionals talk nuts and bolts and the steps they took to find their success today. Find the full transcripts and more at thepracticalfilmmaker.com. On today's show, production designer Clifton Chandler chats about his processes for working art department for indie films, music videos, and commercials. I'm your host, Tanya Musgrave, and today we get to talk art department. Clifton
Woo!
Chandler, production designer, illustrator, and world creator for both indie and commercial projects in television, film, and music videos. Welcome to the show.
Thank you. I'm excited to be here.
I'm so stoked. Okay, so first of all, we go back a ways.
Yeah.
So, I mean, now that I'm trying to think about it, I don't know how 5 years is it?
No, more
No,
than
it's
that.
more than that. Oh my
It's more than
stars.
that. It's like 7.
Yeah. You know, they say the people who are friends for 7 years.
I know. I was just going to say that.
Two peas in a
Exactly.
pot. Hey.
Yep. Already starting good.
Hey. I mean, okay. We got together on one of the projects. I was shooting some production stills, and you were doing
Yeah.
an insane job with the props of a friend's proof of concept. Yeah.
Yeah. It was quite the project.
Yeah.
I was actually technically living in Portland at the time,
Uh-huh.
and the project was in California. But I was
Mhm.
so excited about the project that I actually drove 17
Oh my
hours
gosh, I didn't know that.
to set and slept on a couch for 10 days to be a part of it.
Yes.
Yeah.
Man, but those are the projects that you absolutely love being a part of. I mean,
Oh,
like something that you get to be passionate about. I mean, there's almost it's unmatchable, you know, being
yeah.
able to like have your creativity validated in a way where you're just like, "Oh, I know that I'm creating something good and they appreciate it and they're showcasing it well." In any
I
case,
believe
yeah.
actually even one of the candles, that candle right there,
Oh yeah.
is actually from that production. That was one of the things I kept from the production.
Ah, yes. You better have kept everything because like everything was awesome.
Well, thank you.
I just love art department. Like magic happens there, and it's so much fun. How did you get into this?
So yeah, so I actually kind of fell into it by accident. My dad loved old movies. We watched a lot of Star Trek, a lot of Jim Henson. My favorite
Mm.
movie growing up was Lady Hawk and The Last Unicorn. But it was one of those things where, like, I grew up around watching film, but we were in Bush, Alaska, so a lot of things didn't happen until like 10 years later. So like we didn't
Yeah,
get fads or trends until later on.
yeah.
And so it wasn't until I was in my late 20s that I actually had an opportunity to be on set. And it was a friend, and she was doing a music video. And what ended up happening is I love art. I said, hey, I'd love to help. And I dressed out a cubicle to look like it was lived in. And the director was
Yeah.
like, you should be doing this on a regular basis. And I was like, nah, I'm good. But when I moved down
While
to
while your
Portland,
soul is soaring, of course, you're
yeah,
saying, "No, I'm good."
exactly. Like, oh, I can be Jim Henson someday.
Yeah.
When I came to Portland, I had an opportunity again to be on a web series. It was for $50 for like 18 days of work and
Mm.
whatnot. But I fell in love with the process. And from there, I was invited to be on a commercial. And then I got introduced to some more people. And in about 5 years, I was working from an art PA person to doing actual production design work.
Hmm.
And so, yeah, so now I have like 7 features under my belt and
Nice.
probably 12 or so music videos, a smattering of commercials.
Ah, that's so cool. Okay, all right. So when you say 7 features, I've only had the privilege of producing one so far.
Yeah.
And I feel like, of course, you know, you get done with one and then you're actually ready to make a feature. You're like, okay, well, now I know what I need, so let's do it again. Yeah?
Yeah. Yeah.
So I'm actually curious, what are some of those takeaways where you're just like, okay, next time this is never happening, or next time this is definitely happening?
It's funny, and this might be different for other people, but I honestly think my takeaways are it doesn't matter how much money you get paid. It doesn't matter how much the budget is. It doesn't even matter how big the crew is. But if you have a director and a producer and a team that doesn't believe in you or doesn't have a good vibe, a good
Mm-hmm.
connection, it doesn't matter how much money you throw at it, it's
Mm-hmm.
not going to come out well. So, like for me,
Mm-hmm.
I look at things, I look for people who have good vibes.
Mm-hmm.
So, if their vibe jives with me,
Yeah. Yeah.
then I'm more willing to do stuff for less
Yeah.
and to really put that 210% in.
Yeah.
And if
Yeah.
I'm working on a commercial, great, I'll do my 100%. Like I'm not going to skimp on the actual work. But when you have a very good, tight, like close team,
Yeah.
that is when magic really happens.
Yeah. Seriously. It's really hard to get on any set because it's basically a family, and I get it.
Hmm.
When you find the people that you vibe well with, it's really hard to kind of branch out and just be like, I don't know, who is this person? And
Yeah.
what are they
Yeah.
going to bring to the table? And I don't know. And obviously there's a fun factor to it, like having fun. I don't know if it's just an artist thing, but I think enjoying yourself is a big deal for artists because it's very closely tied to the artistic process, I think.
Yeah, and to your soul. It feels, and
Yeah.
this is me getting like woo woo, but I got a bunch of candles around me. So, like, you do leave a little bit of your soul on every set.
Yeah.
Like for me, it's tying into something more than
Mm-hmm.
just a bottle.
Mm-hmm.
There's more to it than just having a couple candles. Like
Mm-hmm.
it's a part of your soul.
Yeah. Yeah, yeah, yeah. So that was having a good vibe. That's one takeaway. For a practical sense of these are the things that I would have with me, these
Hmm.
particular things. Like I would make sure that this was in place or that I would bring this. What
Hmm.
what are some of those takeaways?
So I have a Mary Poppins bag.
Ooh, yes.
It is where I keep everything from a hammer, wrench, scissors,
Uh-huh.
nail clippers.
Oh, wow, yeah.
Every set, if you don't have a pair of nail clippers, you're not doing it right.
Interesting.
I'll shout out to 3M strips because I love 3M strips. They're great for hanging those random pictures or putting in something on the wall that can't, be damaging to
Mm-hmm.
whatever set we're on.
Mm-hmm.
I tend to have a dinosaur with me on set just because it's like
Like
a
a what?
focus. Like it's just a token of like, hey, we're still having fun, right?
Oh, oh,
Um,
oh, oh. I'm
yeah,
just like,
a little dinosaur.
that's amazing.
Sometimes I'll even bring like a D20 on set
Oh
just
my gosh.
just to be around, just
Yeah.
to have, just to give that kind of like, okay, yeah, there's some grounding here. I guess it's like an inception thing or something. I don't know.
You have your
Um,
token.
yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. I always come to set knowing that the job has to get done. Like things do have to get done. Like there is a job and you need to be serious about it. But
Hmm.
I also tend towards the once that's done or during those times when you can, be goofy, be like embrace the chaos. Like it
Hmm.
is okay to be a little weird. So
Hmm.
every once in a while, I'll just start flapping my wings on set. Just it every set. It just allows your body to like get out of the space that you're in and like all that
Yes.
stress and stuff that
Yes.
builds up. So yeah,
Yes.
so you that's what I do. Like every couple hours, I'll just start flapping my wings.
That is incredible. Oh my gosh. No, well, I this is why we want you on our next set. Seriously. But if I look over into the corner and Clifton's
I'm
just
just
like, all right, everybody stop. We're all
yep,
doing this.
yes, yep,
Sometimes those sets be like that. So you have
yeah.
to.
Well, yeah, and you're like holding on to all the your jobs and you're like this has to get done and like there's all this stress
Hmm.
about like having to organize the chaos.
Yeah.
And sometimes you just have to let that go.
Yeah. When you organize the chaos, what does that look like for you?
A lot
Like,
of IKEA bags.
yeah, okay, okay. We did art for this last, it was the children's game show, and we had the shelving system
Yeah.
that, people were always putting their other crap on it. I'm just like,
Yep.
this stinger does not belong here.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
This doesn't belong here. I remember another set that I was on where they had, art had a whole entire room, and
Mm-hmm.
organization is key, obviously.
Absolutely.
But what's kind of been your go-to system? Like IKEA bags, is it like per scene? Is it like
It usually, for me,
per type?
I almost always bring my own table
Ooh, okay.
because what ends up happening is production may have a table, they might have a spot for art, but usually they don't have a spot for art. It's usually like, oh, this is where the grip is going, this is where this is going, this is the green room for, the actors. I usually don't have a truck. It's usually very small
Mhm.
budgets. So it's my vehicle, and it is usually transported in IKEA bags.
Mhm.
And I either organize it according to the scene
Mhm.
or organize it according to the space that I'm going to be occupying or what that thing is going to
Yeah.
occupy. And then within that, if it's breakable, then it gets covered and protected and whatnot. But
Mhm.
yeah, so totes and IKEA bags, usually not labeled because I'm the only one usually touching it. And if
Mhm.
there is an assistant or somebody, they're filled in when we get there. Like this
Yeah.
goes here, that goes there. Yeah, but the table is always, I always label it, this is art department only. Like
Mhm.
this is my space. I claimed it. I brought it.
Yeah.
Like this is
Yeah.
me. And that always allows me to have the top surface
Mhm.
and also storage underneath.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
yeah, that's normally how I come into. I'm always Mary Poppins bag, props, and a table.
I mean, you said something that kind of resonated. I mean, sometimes, I started out in sound, and I remember that it was constantly looked over, and you said something that alluded to the fact that art department is very often looked over, both in staffing and in space. And
Yeah.
when it comes to the staffing too, I I never know what would be helpful or detrimental,
Hmm.
because to have somebody else in your space that's just like, bleh, like what would you say to a producer who is trying to find somebody to either be of help or is hiring art department people? Here's what you look for, here's where you look
Hmm.
for it.
You are correct. Art department ends up being overlooked a lot of times. But even then, even if it's not overlooked and I say I do get hired, a lot of times the producers or director or someone who's doing the above line stuff already has that friend who is an art person who likes to draw, or the makeup artist that they have already like known, or like they asked their hairstylist if they would do it for free. That can really put a monkey wrench in the actual like flow of a production.
Hmm.
I think one of the biggest things that maybe a producer or director should really key in on is camera department usually hires their people. They hire the people underneath them. They hire
Mm-hmm.
the assistant camera. They hire people that they trust.
Mm-hmm.
And it's the same thing with art department. I
Interesting.
have
Yeah.
a list of people that I call when I need an assistant because I know and I trust that when I ask them, "Hey, can you set that table?" They know that according to the Vanderbilt Book of Etiquette, this is how you dress a table,
Yeah.
that there is the same jargon are being used,
Mm-hmm.
that they know not to move certain things.
Mm-hmm.
And it always seems to be, or very often seems to be, something that a producer doesn't realize when
Mm-hmm.
they're hiring.
Yeah, yeah. You had mentioned before, like I have this table because I didn't have a truck. We had a lady on our Gear and Gadgets segment a while back who actually had her own box truck, and that kind of was like her makeshift studio where
Yeah.
she could haul stuff like furniture and fix stuff. And like, I'm guessing the use of that truck is like an addendum, or like, is it kind of a la carte?
I would love to have an art truck at some point. That would be amazing for myself. But
Yeah.
then I'd have to make sure my partner is okay with me parking it in the driveway. um, but it's one of those things where I think that's something that they still have to bill. You still bill that. Like there's
Yes.
wear and tear on the vehicle, and there's
Yes,
like
absolutely.
transportation
Hmm.
costs and whatnot.
Yeah.
I usually end up forgo that, and I either just ask for, gas receipts, like this is how much it costs to transport the
Hmm.
gear and all that if they're not providing a truck.
All right. Speaking of billing,
Yeah.
I am curious what somebody who is entering this field could be expected to get for pay. Is this like a day rate or a weekly rate? Like that kind of a thing.
Again, I might be a little strange in that I kind of hop the independent film
Hmm.
train.
With
So a lot of projects are
commercial. Yeah, that's
yeah, and then jump in
completely different.
commercials every once in a while. So
Yeah.
like I have two worlds that I really like focus on. In independent film, especially here in Portland area, it can range like when I was first starting out, like $50 was great a day. Like
Oh,
that
okay.
was like that was my like, oh yeah, okay, cool. I'm here, I'm learning all that kind of stuff.
Yeah, yeah.
150 I think is reasonable for a PA. Somebody that's like starting out in any department. For me, 150 is probably your baseline. You wouldn't want to get much less than that.
Hmm.
I still make, even as a production designer on the smaller stuff, I still make between 250 and 500 a day.
Hmm.
So that's not that much.
Mm.
It does allow me, especially with those projects, like I said, I'm very picky about the vibes that I get. If I have vibes that I'm not jiving with the crew, I'll probably not pick that film. But when I'm jiving well, like 250 is 300, it's a pretty decent amount.
Yeah.
Or flat rates.
Yes,
A
flat
lot of
rates. Okay.
times they'll
Yeah.
save money and I'll feel like I'm getting a big enough chunk that I
Hmm.
can decide when I work for
Yeah.
them.
Yeah,
So
yeah, yeah. And for commercial.
for commercial, yeah,
Mhm.
low end for me is 700 now. So
Yeah.
like it's usually a day rate on set is 700, and then it either fluctuates between 4 to 5 for prep days and wrap days.
That's what I was going to ask about next, because like prep can be very ambiguous. Just be
Yeah,
like, well, I'm going to be working on this one piece, or like, hey, is this like conversation about it? Is that counting as hours or time, or
yeah.
hourly rate always gets super
It
eh.
can be, yeah, it can be a little ambiguous at times. I'm just very clear with them.
Oh,
Usually I'll
clarity. It's
say
amazing.
I'll say, okay, this is about 3 days worth of work.
Okay. Yeah.
Even though I'm doing it 3 weeks before, I'll
Hmm.
say I'll need 3 days of work pre-prep or pre-pro, and then I'll do 2 days of wrap
Yep.
afterwards.
Gotcha.
And that can fluctuate depending on the project and how
Yeah.
detailed it is.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Nice. So, how do things work on set then? Like, how many people would you typically need, or like is like one person or?
I would love to have at least two.
Hmm. Yeah.
One person who acts more like the art director, someone who can actually like make sure things are getting done with the specifications that I have, and then someone that actually assists in doing that practically. A lot of times it's either just myself
Mm-hmm.
or it's me and a PA. Sometimes I'm really lucky to be able to hire people who I've hired before
Hmm.
or have had experience with art department on film, and then it's really easy, it flows really well, and we can move furniture and do those types of things. Yeah,
Yeah.
commercials it's usually just me,
Hmm.
and sometimes those are fun, and sometimes it's a lot funner when you have like two people and you're like, okay, now move that couch over there, let's do this. My little
Yeah.
diva comes out.
Good to know. Logging that away for when I ask you to hire me for your assistant one
Hmm, yeah, yeah, yeah.
day. But like, what if you work on something, I mean, even for a while? Say you work on like this particular piece for a while, and the director doesn't necessarily like what you did, and you have to put more hours into fixing stuff, or like hours and materials that you weren't necessarily expecting. Because, like, an illustration, you have like 2 rounds of revisions, like, there's that
Hmm,
kind of a thing. So,
yeah.
what is there in terms of art department?
Pre-production is really important when it comes to set schedules. So like
Hmm.
one of the things that I've had to actually teach other people, myself first and then other people,
Hmm.
is to talk to your art director or your production designer
Hmm.
about how much time it's going to take to actually set the
Hmm.
scene.
Hmm.
Because a lot of times what will end up happening is, oh, they gave us, half an hour and it literally is redressing an entire room.
Hmm.
That's not going to happen in half an hour when you have,
Hmm.
lighting and grip and electric in there trying to
Yep.
do their job.
Hmm.
There's a lot of moving parts, and you can't just automatically put, a pillow on a couch and call it art. You know, it just doesn't
Yeah.
work that way. Commercials are pretty, set. They have their schedule and you know what to expect. But a lot of times the independent shows can get a little weird. It's like, hurry up, we need this on set. And it's like, well, you gave your gaffer enough time to set up lights, but you didn't put in enough time for us to actually make and do our job correctly. So there's been some, some interesting conversations after the fact. I tend to be very professional on set and then cry in the closet later.
No.
Yeah.
I think that is probably one of the most enjoyable things as a producer, not making people cry.
No, yeah. Like, oh, okay.
No, it's figuring out the needs of people and trying to make I mean, that sounds so horrible. It's like make everybody happy. But I think I get chills sometimes when I see people who are really passionate about one certain direction, and I know that this other person over here has that same passion in that direction, and just being like, hey, you guys, here, just
Yep.
yep. I mean, you're seeing that happen, and they're happy. They're happy over here. You're happy. It's just like, hey, maybe.
Yeah, it feeds your soul when things are happening. It's magic. That's not by accident. Those are people intentionally making sure that what they're doing isn't interfering with the other person's job and allowing that other person to have the space to do their job. There's a DP that I absolutely love. They've moved to LA. It makes me so sad, but also very happy for them. They make everything that I do look 300 times better because they know how much time and effort it took, and they give me that space to do what I need to do to make my job work.
Yeah.
And then they find the best angles to film it. And that's when I say it's magic. That's when those pieces fall together. But it's about the relationship. It's not necessarily about the project. It's the relationship building. If I was to say what's the big key for all of, art department is building positive, creative, and inspiring relationships.
Yeah.
There was a time in my career where I took everything so personally, and I had a great production designer that taught me 100 things to do on set. One of them was to fly. Like that was one of my favorite things that I learned from them, is just to get, like, they were dancing, but like, find something to get out of the space that you're in. You do have to rein back your crazy to make a project work.
Could you give me an example?
I had a director who was very particular about they didn't give me enough time to really build the set the way that I wanted to. And they were just, having to get stuff done and doing stuff. And gosh, they actually yelled at me on set, like in front of everyone. Probably a crew of about 20 people. There were like 4 actors in the room. There was a 14-year-old actor sitting in the corner waiting for their turn. I was just mentioning something in order to help their set, right? So the actor did a movement that wasn't described in the previous discussion, and they moved, and there were cords under the table that you could see from gaffing. Like, there's cords in your scene. And so I mentioned, hey, we didn't get a chance to talk about this or see where the action of the movement is. So there's cords in there. What do you want me to do? Like, do you want me to try and fix this? And just a snap, like, ego trip, just, are you making this film or am I? And blah, blah, blah.
Oh, my stars.
And so my crazy was boiling up. And all I said is, I was just trying to make this film the best that it could be. Sure, it's your film. If you want cords in it, you can have cords in it. And I walked off set and I just cooled off. And it was like one of those things where I could have definitely like pushed and like did it and like made sure that the cords weren't in there and all that kind of stuff. And like really, but at that point, did the director really want me to do that? Like, did they really want me to do my job? I don't think they did. So I was like, all right, well, then you can have cords on your set.
It would be a perfectly reasonable thing to ask, because it could have been even something of the camera op or the DP, like, oh yeah, the shot wasn't supposed to dip that low, like something so simple. Good on you for walking away, number one.
Yeah. Well, and then that was the thing, is like,
but
I had
also good on you for speaking up and saying that.
I had every crew person come over and be like, hey, are you okay? And I'm like, yeah, I'm fine. I was doing my job.
You can't argue with that. I mean, like,
No.
that's why I'm here. Do you want me here or not? Like, come on.
But I will never work with this person again. The punishment for having stood up for myself is I didn't get an actual card at the end of the credits. So everybody else got their own card and I got lumped in with the art assistants.
What?
So as a production designer, I didn't even get my own name, and it wasn't even on a legible slide. It was on a slide that was really like difficult to read.
I mean,
So
that's a
like
level of petty. Come
it was
on.
a level of petty that I will never forgive or forget.
Oh, my stars.
Yeah.
My stars.
So
Anyway,
that's what I mean about vibe. You
yeah,
really have to find those people and
yes,
find the family that you love to work
yeah,
with.
yeah,
And then yeah, it does become a family and everybody you take care of your own, you take care of those that are
yeah.
doing a good job,
Yeah.
and then you make magic.
And speaking of magic, one of the things that I think we had talked about one time was just like the role of colors and textures and all that
Oh
stuff.
yeah,
And I
my
remember,
favorite.
yes, right? I don't remember who I heard it from or where it was, and I don't know if it was a wardrobe person or a production designer. But I remember her big thing was that like every well-rounded piece has like three textures. And I've
Hmm.
always looked for it now. So I'm just like, oh hey, cloth, leather, metal, like wood, this, yeah, there's always something. Hey, yeah, I see it. I see it. I see it.
See,
And I
there's
mean,
wood, metal, velvet.
yes.
Yep.
Yes. So, I mean, is there some kind of, I don't know, random rule like that that you live by? I mean, the textures is one thing, but like, is there a rule that's kind of out there in the ethos that, like, I don't know, a rising production designer would love to know?
So this probably question gets a little tricky for me because I didn't go to school for art. I took a
Hmm.
couple art classes in college. In high school, I was homeschooled, so I only took a couple of classes through the college, beginning drawing, that
Yeah.
kind of stuff. I did, however, spend every waking moment in college at the bookstore, at the library, poring over Japanese garden designs, small
Ooh.
home renovations,
Ooh.
architecture books, sculpture books. I poured over every like design style book with
Mm-hmm.
pictures and little snippets and stuff. And so I feel like I've over the years, over like those 10 years and beyond, I've gleaned so much information through visual and auditory, like watching movies upon movies upon movies, that
Mm-hmm.
what fits and what works is
Mm-hmm.
just now ingrained. It's just an automatic thing. I can walk through a store and be like, okay, these three things work because you're right, texture, colors. I don't have the formulas that maybe someone who went to art school or film school would have
Mm-hmm.
that says, oh, well, this is what you need for composition. But again, your shapes. Shapes are very important. Shapes, I think, rule of thumb for me is if a set looks good flat, then you're probably good. Composition wise, if you look at the frame of a picture in the camera and it looks like a painting, it looks like a good composition, then you're good. If something's off, figure it out.
Mm-hmm.
Help the DP figure out why. Maybe it's there's too much space up here,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
that kind of thing.
You and I were evaluating a set, and you said something where like the set looks flat.
Yeah.
So, I mean, in that particular context, it was not a good thing. What's the difference?
You do have to look at things with a background, foreground, middle ground. Like there are those types of terminology that you do have to like know, okay, well, we do need something up front. We do need something in the middle and we need something in the background. Now, that also has to be discussed with your director because
Mm-hmm.
sometimes directors have their own ideas of what it should look like. And
Mm-hmm.
sometimes they want it to be empty and cold and unnerving. So
Mm-hmm.
you have to have that discussion. And again, that goes back to have your
Communication.
discussions
Yeah.
with your director, with your director of photography, with the vibe, get on the same page. Because if you're filling a scene with too much stuff and it
Mm-hmm.
throws them off, then you're not doing the right job.
Okay, so now we're gonna ask about some of the tools of your trade. We're kind of gonna go by rapid fire here. What
Okay.
gear or gadget is a good old reliable?
Definitely a Mary Poppins bag. A Mary
Mm-hmm.
Poppins bag with all the things that you don't know that you're going to need.
Why fingernail clippers?
Fingernail clippers because it helps with any kind of wardrobe issue. So
Okay.
like if there's fuzz or anything like that, you can use it to cut people's beards or hair. It's super strange and weird. It also allows you to cut string or any kind of like small stuff.
Huh. Okay. Okay. Okay.
Like I said, it's one of those things I never knew I needed until I needed it.
Mm.
I always have just a random assortment of tools, picture hanging stuff. A lot of times, like I said, I'm going to throw out 3M again, but if I had not found 3M strips, my job would be so much harder if they did not develop that technology. That's Velcro. Come on. Velcro on walls, perfect thing in the whole world. Bill me later. So yeah, so that, and then what else? I always bring something fun on set. I always bring something to liven up the mood or just like help me focus again on that. Hey, this is fun. IKEA bags. They're the cheapest and easiest thing to use to organize stuff, and it doesn't take up space at your house.
Okay. All right. Nice. How about your favorite new gadget that revolutionizes how you work?
Huh. It's not new, but it's new to me. Google Sheets. I used to handwrite lists of props and things on the back of the script. And now with my new computer, I've been using Google Sheets a
Internet?
lot more now.
Yeah. Nice. Very
Yeah.
nice.
I feel like I've stepped up somehow. Like
You
I
have
said,
for
I'm
this
from
century.
Alaska, so everything happens at least a decade later than it should.
Oh my gosh. Well, I mean, aside from the aversion to technology, like you have the speakeasy in the back. I mean, come on.
Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah.
so, all right, favorite industry related new purchase. What have you just gotten that has to do with the industry?
It's my drawing tablet from Wacom, my
Wacom.
Wacom tablet. Yeah, I taught myself over COVID how to illustrate digitally. Originally, it was all I did everything by hand with, pencil and paper and whatnot. And I taught myself with the Cintiq 13 Pro from
Okay.
Wacom, and that is like the new gadget for me that has just like I do concept art now so much easier and quicker.
A story of when something went wrong.
Oh, jeez. Oh, I told the good story that went
Yeah,
wrong
you did.
already.
You did. But I want another one and what you did to fix it or grow from it.
Okay. There was another project I was on. It was a sci-fi. It was the smallest low budget thing that you could think of. It was a short film. We had slotted a whole month of pre-production. So it was supposed to be a whole month of prepping this space. It was an empty warehouse. It's supposed to look like a laboratory.
Mhm.
And I ended up only having 2 weeks. And this was when I was still working a day job and I had taken time off work and I didn't have a lot of money, but I still really wanted to do this project. And the director changed the dates and was like, you have to live with it. This is what we got. And so I rolled with it. I did everything I could to just be like, all right, cool, let's just roll with this. And worked day and night, ended up getting a lot of things donated and borrowed. And for the budget, it looked pretty great. I had help with a couple projects, a couple of the bigger props. The director brought in another person to do some prop building. And those props that were brought to set weren't up to the same level that my stuff was. So it looked very out of place. I didn't really have the ability to ask to have them redo it. And there really wasn't any time. And again, like it was one of those things that it was just like small things being said of like, oh, you haven't done your job right. Or, oh, this didn't work out. We gave you all this money. Like you didn't give me all this money and you hired somebody else without asking me if I needed that. So there was a lot. And there was supposed to be like a dead body skeleton that was like badly burnt. And I had talked to my special effects person and they had done a great job on the body and everything was great. And it was burnt on the wrong side. And the director flipped out and was like, this is not what we talked about. Even though in the script, it was the way I had asked the person to do. But when they were filming, they filmed it the wrong way because they hadn't walked through the set to look at the right angles that they wanted to shoot the right way.
Yeah.
So like instead of getting burnt from the back, they got burnt from the front. And
Yeah.
so it was one of those things where the communication wasn't there. And then I got blamed for having my prop person make it the wrong way, even though the script said it this way.
Yeah.
And that was one of those times where I was like, I took it so personally. I'd never been angry on set except this one time. And we had just finished shooting part of a set, and I put my hand through a panel that I had made just out of sheer, like, I had no more emotional energy and it just needed to go somewhere. And then I just burst into tears. Like, it was like one of those moments where I was so much was being nitpicked and like pulled apart, and like I was juggling all these things, and this one time I broke and I just started bawling, like hardcore bawling. I just sat in the rain on the stoop of the studio space, just crying for a good 45 minutes. I had a couple people come out and, you know, like try and get me there, and then I walked back into set, finished the day, finished everything, very professional, like, but that was probably the lowest I've ever been on set. And so I think that's probably what helped me be professional with that other story with the other director, was because it's like, look, I can't put all of myself into these things anymore. Like, I will put my soul into it, but I need to know that it's going to be protected.
Absolutely. You know, there's a lot that we talk on this podcast about boundaries, you know, and I think even for artists, because we have the tendency to just give and give and give and give, you know, I can definitely relate to your story of having that kind of passion be picked apart.
And then at the end of the day, all the work that you did gets tossed in the dump. Like, that's the other thing. Like, none of the camera department or gaff gear gets dumped in the garbage after all of that work.
Literally.
But art department literally gets dumped in the trash at the end of the day. Literally.
That's so true.
Yeah. So all the work that you did for months on end then gets tossed in the garbage.
I never thought of that.
Yeah. So when you have water bottles on set, it's hard. You get like visceral reactions. Because it's like, you're treating my space as garbage, even though I know at the end of the day it's actually going to get trashed.
Yeah. Like, what question should I have asked you?
Why?
Okay.
Why would I put myself through physical, emotional, mental, sometimes spiritual stress? Why would someone want to do that? And to be honest, I have that question often for myself sometimes.
Yeah.
But at the end of the day, art is life. Some of my most memorable moments is watching everything come together, being on the monitor and seeing my work and the work of a dozen other people create an emotional, visceral reaction that once everybody like comes out of it and you hear the word cut and you come out of it and everyone's like cheering and like excited because they know they've made something good, that's what makes it worth it.
So good. How do people find you or follow your work?
Mostly on Instagram, at Cliff Chandler with one F, Cliff Chandler World Creator. I have a website, www.cliftonchandler.com. It's not updated very often, so there's some old stuff on there. I don't know if this is a time to like shout out to my next project.
Yes, absolutely. This is your shameless plug up.
Okay, cool. So speaking of illustration work, I did work for this wonderful, lovely, if you can see it, it's a huge map of a world, but I'm into Dungeons and Dragons.
Yes.
And so I've been doing some work for a lovely man, Joey O'Day, over at Dweeb Quest, which you can find them on YouTube channel, Dweeb Quest, and they're going to be rolling out a Kickstarter sometime this summer with all of my art and concept art in it for their campaign book.
Yes,
So,
because the thing that we did not touch on was the
yeah,
world creation. And I
yeah,
remember the last time we got together on a second set, and I remember you were just like, "Oh yeah, by the way, yeah, I created a whole entire written alphabet and
yeah,
language and
yeah,
maps." And I'm just like, "Get out.
yeah.
Are you serious?"
This is the second time I've done that. So I did that for a film, and this is another time I've done for D&D campaign book. So
Love it.
yeah,
This has been so cool. I can't wait to get together, number one, because
yeah,
it's gonna happen.
oh yeah,
I can't wait to assist for you because
that will also happen.
throw that hat out there right there. But
I
thank
like your
you.
vibes.
Yeah. Thank you so much for sharing your insight, for opening up and sharing what you can to all of our listeners out there. I know anybody who's wanting to get into art direction or production design will find this extremely helpful.
Well, I was happy to be here. It's definitely a tough job. Someone has to do it. You know, loving the magic that we can create together. That's the reasons why.
If you enjoyed this interview, follow us right here and on Instagram, ask us questions, and check out more episodes at thepracticalfilmmaker.com. Be well and God bless. We'll see you next time on The Practical Filmmaker.